Hello there. How much do you know about the game Luigi's Mansion? Better question, how much do you think you know about it? Have you ever looked up the beta version of the game? Well, I've always been fascinated with beta games. I know about them all. Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Banjo-Kazooie and many more. The changes they make from the beta versions to the final versions are quite significant. So recently, after playing Luigi's Mansion, I noticed that I had no dirt whatsoever on the game. I never actually thought about playing a beta game before till I heard my friend got a copy of Luigi's Mansion beta. No way, this can't be possible, I thought to myself. What are the odds he could have gotten unreleased ideas for Luigi's Mansion? Of course, with him being a collector, he focused more on having it in his possession rather than playing it. He knew about my love for the beta game, so he let me borrow the copy for a little while. It was like a different game. So many things had changed between the beta and the final version. I saw a clock where the Game Boy Horror was supposed to be. I knew about that feature and accepted the challenge. Also, I saw the overheat meter, so I couldn't use the poltergust for very long or else it would hurt Luigi. I was intrigued greatly by all these changes. The ghosts were different colours, the music was more 8-bit, I wasn't bothered at all, I loved it. I went into Chauncey's room and sucked up the last ghost, but in my process, the poltergust overheated. God damn it, I shouted at the game. Further examining the situation, I noticed Luigi's head was a bit odd. Parts of his brain were visible and each time I walked you could see blood drip from the back of his head. It was like someone took a mace to the back of his head and smashed it violently. He dripped like a sink that was never turned off all the way. It was pretty freaky, I have to admit, but he still controlled like normal. Everything was going along without any sort of change, so maybe it was a glitch. I continued on with my journey as the back of Luigi's head dripped small drops of dark red blood. I went into the parlour aiming to clear the rest of the rooms on the second floor. I walked in and the lamp exploded. It made me jump, but I was aware of that add-on. The freaky thing was that after the lamp exploded, Luigi screamed and covered his face for a brief moment. I spun around seeing what was wrong and his face was cut. Little spouts of blood trickled down his cheeks, yet he didn't seem bothered. It spewed out a little as if someone had turned on a water fountain of pure maroon coloured blood. Now I'm getting creeped out. But still, it was very intriguing to me. I walked down the hallway that would be deemed as the beginning of Area 2. I saw a puff of cloud behind me. And then out shouted a ghost as Luigi was scared off his feet. He began to do a reverse crab walk across the floor in terror, another concept I knew about so it didn't feel out of place to me. After Luigi arose from his cowering position, I walked to the basement area. Luigi walked down the first staircase, then I tried activating the sliding ability, so he did. Luigi slid down the stairs but landed on his feet with his ankles shattered on contact. A thunderous crack was heard. He screamed loudly and he grabbed hold of his leg, rocking back and forth. Odd, I said to myself, rather perplexed at the situation. He stopped holding his leg and a cutscene triggered. The camera was focusing on Luigi's frontal view and the stairs behind him. He slowly grabbed the rail and stood up. Then Luigi started mumbling to himself. No. 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 No! The camera panned over to show an armada of ghosts in the corner. They all fled after turning around to see Luigi screaming in disbelief and horror. From there it unveiled the body of a very dead and rotting Toad. The top of his head looked like a giant had taken a bite out of it. Maggots crawled through his freshly opened gap in his head. Half his face was missing. The left side had flesh ripping off, showing just bare bone. His jaw was dislocated and hung askew while his head leaned against the wall, unable to support its own weight. Clearly he had been dead for quite some time. But what were the ghosts doing there? Feeding? It bothered me though, so I sat there, controller in my hand with sweaty palms, and panting heavily as if I'd undergone a marathon. Should I go on? Or should I just leave it alone? Sitting there watching the cutscene that only took a couple minutes felt like hours. Just contemplating on what to do next felt like a psychotic idea. But I may not ever have this chance again. So I kept going. There's only one other place that I could think of that I hadn't yet been to. Outside. Luigi was a mess. The bleeding had slowed down, as did his movements. The blood had only dripped every few seconds rather than each step. His foot was sideways, yet he walked normally but slower as if experienced that thing we define as pain. Filled with curiosity, I figured that it was one of those times where it's better not to ask questions. As I made it back to the foyer, I stared at Luigi. His eyes sunk. His face looked as if it was melting plastic. I grabbed open the door to explore the outside world and look at what was out there. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to walk more than 3 steps outside before a cutscene triggered. My fears had risen as I placed the controller on my lap and covered my mouth with my hands. My heart sped up and I didn't know what to expect next. I knew the beta was scarier than the original, but I never dreamt it would be this much more adrenaline filled. Luigi opened his mouth in shock. The camera turned from a frontal view of Luigi over to Bowser standing in front of a tree. Bowser had his back turned and looked over his shoulder. He stood out of the way of the tree as it showed Mario torn to shreds hung on the tree like a sick holiday decoration. His arm stuck through a branch, his torso in half with all his organs swept laying on the floor. His head lay on the top like a star to a Christmas tree. The lightning flashed as it showed a more detailed image of Mario's face. His eyes were rolled to the back of his head, his mouth drenched in blood. His mustache had been ripped off like a band-aid, his skin hanging in pieces as if someone had dragged the cheese grater slowly across his face. That was it though. The cutscene had ended. Next thing I know, Luigi is standing back where I left him, his hands grasping his head and looking down at the ground. If he squeezed any tighter, it looked like his head would pop. After the time was up, the game over cutscene started, showing Luigi's lifeless face. The very same face that stays in your mind and haunts your dreams each night. The lightning flashed again, showing his dismantled face with a gash diagonally from his right eye to his left side of his mouth. It continued to play at this time, but showing things from Luigi's point of view. Luigi looked down at his hands as they started to go slightly transparent and fade away. He grabbed the poltergust and thrust it off his body, placed it on the ground in front of him. A small tear rolled down Luigi's cheek as he held the nozzle directly to his face and hesitantly turned the poltergust on. He screamed loudly as my speakers began to fill with static. He was slowly spiralling into the device he fought the ghosts with. The poltergust rocked back and forth, sucking on what was once its master until completely engulfed in the machine. The camera zoomed in on the device for a brief moment, then a hand reached out and grabbed it. It was a frail old hand, by none other than our friend Professor Egad. He grinned violently, with his baby tooth looking almost sharp enough to cut through flesh. He walked off with his creation and all his captives. The screen went black and the sound went quiet. As the fading transition desisted, it showed a painting on the gallery wall, but a painting of none other than Luigi. Luigi was standing holding his head down with his face looking half melted and blood-stained. Behind him was a crowd of ghosts reaching to get their revenge for now and the rest of eternity. I sat still, too scared to move, when suddenly I noticed something. A cloud of smoke was ascending from my GameCube. I panicked and stood up and backed away. Within seconds it burst into flame. I darted out of my seat and filled a glass with water to douse the burning hardware. The fire was extinguished and the smoke filled my room. I walked over to open the windows and air the place out and sat back down in my chair. I leaned in to grab the GameCube. I yanked it violently out of its place so the cord split. Not like it mattered anyway, it was broken. But when I opened the disc slot to search for the empty beta disc, it was vacant. I looked at the wreckage from what was once my GameCube and it was completely empty. I peered closely and saw the words Luigi's Mansion burned into the disc slot. The next day, I met back up with my friend the Collector. I asked him where he got the beta for Luigi's Mansion, but all he did was look at me puzzled and said, "What beta?" I spent countless hours trying to tell him what happened, but he didn't believe me. I tried showing him the words etched inside my GameCube, but he couldn't find them. The GameCube was still a wreck, of course, but it was nothing more than overheated, worn out ruins of an old Nintendo product.
Yeah.